Good morning. I've just been to Buckingham Palace and accepted His Majesty the King's invitation to form a government in his name.
Following a meeting with King Charles III, Rishi Sunak has become the 57th Prime Minister of the United Kingdom and the third in the office this year alone. Sunak replaces Liz Truss, who spent a turbulent and record-breakingly short 50 days as Prime Minister before resigning. So who is Rishi Sunak, and what can we expect from his Prime Ministership?
The government I lead will not leave the next generation, your children and grandchildren, with a debt to settle that we were too weak to pay ourselves.
Born in Southampton in May 1980, Sunak is the UK's first millennial Prime Minister, coming to power aged just 42. That makes him the 7th youngest person to hold the post, although it's still considerably older than William Pitt the Younger, who became Prime Minister aged just 24 in 1783. Sunak's parents, Yashvir and Usha, were born in East Africa, in Kenya and Tanzania respectively, although they are both of Indian Punjabi descent. As a result, Sunak is the first ever person of colour to hold the office of Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. Sunak is also Hindu, and with particularly poignant timing, became Prime Minister in the middle of Diwali, the 5-day Hindu festival of light.
Everybody can give something, whether they're born in this country or not, you know, and to have a Asian descent Prime Minister is fantastic.
Sunak has made much of working alongside his mother at her so-called tiny pharmacy in Southampton. In doing so, he drew clear parallels with former Conservative Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher, who famously grew up living above her parents' grocery shop in Grantham, Lincolnshire.
I have friends who are aristocrats, I have friends who are upper class, I have friends who are, working class, but I'm not working class.
As a Star Wars-obsessed teenager, Sunak studied at Winchester College, one of the world's most prestigious and expensive private boarding schools. Ex-pupils include 4 archbishops, 4 field marshals, and numerous politicians, including previous PM Henry Addington.
So why, when you were young, did you say you had no working class friends?
I mean, Andrew, we all say silly things when we're students, but I've talked about my background. My family, as you said, were welcomed here as migrants.
No, we know that. I feel I almost know them personally myself. I've heard so much about. So it was just wrong when you said that.
Yeah, I'm glad. I grew up working in my mum's pharmacy.
No, we know all that.
And you don't grow up doing that unless you actually interact with lots of people. And I spent my time making sure that we served our community.
While head boy at Winchester, Sunak spent his summer holidays working as a waiter in a local Indian restaurant. He has also previously discussed his love of all things Coca-Cola.
Do you prefer Coke or Pepsi?
Do you ask everyone this question, or not? No, I'm really funny because I am, again, I'm a massive, so one of these things that not that many people know about me. So I collect Coca-Cola things.
Oh, for real?
Yeah, I'm a Coke addict, total Coke addict, Coca-Cola addict.
Yes, I was going to say.
Just for the record, just be totally clear.
Upon leaving school, Sunak attended Oxford University, gaining first-class honours in the world-famous Philosophy, Politics and Economics course. In 2006, he also gained an MBA from Stanford University in the United States, where he met the woman who would become his wife, Akshata Murthy. Akshata is the daughter of N.R. Narayana Murthy, a billionaire businessman once dubbed the Bill Gates of India. But her financial affairs would later cause Sunak headaches when it was revealed she had non-domiciled status, allowing her to avoid paying tax on earnings outside the UK. Although the arrangement was legal, it did raise eyebrows given her husband was running the UK tax system as Chancellor when the story emerged.
The Chancellor has imposed tax rise after tax rise on working people. And he's said time and again, there's no alternative, we've got no option. If it now transpires that his wife has used schemes to reduce her own tax, then that's breathtaking hypocrisy.
Post-university, Sunak worked as an analyst for the investment bank Goldman Sachs, and then for 2 hedge funds run by the French banker Patrick de Gorse. Until 2015, he was also a director of investment firm Catamaran Ventures, owned by his billionaire father-in-law.
This is my trusty binder, all these tabs, all the different things that I'm responsible for. I spend most of the morning having a flick through there, make sure I'm prepared, and then head down to Parliament and take the questions.
Sunak's career in politics began in October 2014 when he became Conservative MP for former Tory leader William Hague's old seat of Richmond in North Yorkshire, one of the safest Conservative seats in the UK and held by the party for over 100 years. Quickly identified as a rising star, Sunak's early endorsement of Brexit was significant, as at the time most ambitious new Tory MPs had opted to remain loyal to the Remain campaign, backed by then Prime Minister David Cameron at the 2016 EU referendum.
Get Brexit done!
A series of significant jobs quickly followed, including Parliamentary Under-Secretary of State for Local Government between 2018 and 2019 under Theresa May, and Chief Secretary to the Treasury between 2019 and 2020 under Boris Johnson. While Sunak's rapid ascent had taken place fairly quietly, he really emerged onto the national stage when he became Sajid Javid's replacement as Chancellor of the Exchequer in February 2020, during the early stages of the COVID-19 pandemic.
It is a budget that delivers on our promises to the British people. It is the budget of a government that gets things done.
Very much in the deep end from day one, Sunak was quickly forced to set aside his natural instincts as a small state, tax-cutting Conservative to oversee the biggest state intervention in the UK's economy since World War II. As the impact of COVID and several national lockdowns ravaged the country's finances, Sunak brought in the UK's first ever employee retention programme, including a furlough scheme to guarantee workers' wages and a £330 billion loan scheme to help struggling businesses. There were accusations he took those calls too far, however, with his mid-pandemic Eat Out to Help Out scheme, in which government-funded discounts were available to those visiting restaurants, leading to COVID infections rising by as much as 17% in the UK, according to research by the University of Warwick.
Yesterday evening, the Prime Minister announced a national lockdown. The new strain of the virus presents us with a new challenge, just as the vaccine is being rolled out. So it is right to give more support for businesses to get through until spring.
Sunak emerged from the pandemic with a reputation not entirely intact. Many on the right wing of his party felt deeply uneasy at a Conservative Chancellor overseeing such significant state interventions and hundreds of billions of pounds in government spending. Former Minister for Brexit Opportunities, Jacob Rees-Mogg, was even reported to have branded Sunak a socialist.
I think Rishi Sunak was not a successful Chancellor. He was a high-tax Chancellor, and he was a Chancellor who was not alert to the inflationary problem.
And there were other issues in play too. In April, Sunak received a fixed penalty notice from the police for attending a party with Boris Johnson during the COVID-19 lockdown. It was around the same time that news of his wife's aforementioned tax affairs first emerged. In a Conservative party riven by increasingly bitter divisions, Sunak had become something of a divisive figure. That came to a head in July when he sensationally quit as Chancellor as scandal after scandal engulfed Prime Minister Boris Johnson.
Was it no longer working? Yes, and that's why I resigned. But let me be clear. I will have no part in a rewriting of history that seeks to demonise Boris, exaggerate his faults, or deny his efforts.
Yeah. Sunak's resignation helped pave the way for numerous other senior Conservative Party figures to quit, eventually culminating in Boris Johnson being ousted as Prime Minister, and a leadership contest in which Sunak won the support of the majority of his fellow MPs, but ultimately lost to Liz Truss in a vote by Conservative Party members.
Therefore, I give notice that Liz Truss is elected as the leader of the Conservative and Unionist Party. Liz, come up on stage.
Just 7 weeks later, with the economy in turmoil and a civil war raging inside the Tory party, Sunak has already replaced Truss as Prime Minister. But what can we expect from Sunak the PM? The number one priority under a Sunak premiership is stability, something seemingly lacking under his predecessor.
Well, the Prime Minister is not under a desk, as the Honourable Lady. With regret, she is not here for a very good reason.
During the leadership debates, Sunak accused Truss of fairy tale economics with her promise of unfunded tax cuts. Sunak also warned Truss's economic policy could cause an inflationary spiral and would mean increasing borrowing to historic and dangerous levels, putting the public finances in serious jeopardy.
The most pressing economic priority for the new Prime Minister and the new government is to grip inflation. We cannot make it worse. Inflation is the enemy that makes everybody poorer. It erodes your savings. It erodes your living standards. It means that those of you that have mortgages will see your interest rates go up higher and higher. So I don't think the responsible thing to do right now is launch into some unfunded spree of borrowing and more debt. That will just make inflation worse. It will make the problem longer.
Sunak's reputation for putting national need before his own political ideology and the fact his dire warnings about Trussonomics all came true mean the markets broadly view him as a competent figure. That will be further boosted by Jeremy Hunt being retained as Chancellor.
The government has today decided to make further changes to the mini-budget.
Spending cuts and tax hikes look inevitable, however, to both undo the billions in damage done by Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng's so-called mini-budget last month, as well as to reduce government spending. The war in Ukraine continues to wreak havoc with energy prices, and inflation is skyrocketing as a result.
Now, in the last few days we've seen the pound fall, we've seen the cost of government borrowing rockets. Has your mini-budget been a major economic disaster?
In his first speech as Prime Minister, Sunak outlined the numerous challenges the UK is facing and vowed to earn the country's trust, putting the nation's need before politics. But with the next general election likely to be held in just under 2 years, Sunak has yet another massive job ahead of him if he is to resuscitate the UK economy, unite his party, as well as overturn Labour's current 30+ point poll lead to keep the Conservatives in power. For even this highest of high achievers, it remains to be seen whether that will be one challenge too far.
All I can say is that I am not daunted. I know the high office I have accepted, and I hope to live up to its demands.